Welcome to the second week of our small group study through the book of Hebrews. A couple of weeks ago, Rebecca and I took the kids to a pumpkin patch, and on the same grounds as the pumpkin patch, there was a corn maze. Many of you have maybe had this opportunity to experience going through one of these mazes. And you know that when you arrive at the entrance to a maze, there are 2 points that you are aware of. You're aware of the entrance and the exit. But between the entrance and the exit is that maze experience, that journey that you'll take through. And that's really the challenge. It's the fun. It's the draw of going through one of these mazes. And so you have a goal of making it to the exit. And along the way, you have to make these decisions. What path do you want to follow? Now, unless you're really directionally challenged, you'll always have an understanding or an idea of about where that exit is. But at the same time, not every path that seems to take you toward that exit will do so. Some will dead end. Some will just run you in a big circle and right back to where you started. So making it through this maze in a somewhat efficient manner is truly a challenge. It's truly a goal. And you want to make sure that you take the right paths. Sometimes those may not seem to be going in the right direction, but they turn out to be exactly in the right direction. So you really focus on the journey as you focus on your goal. At the same time, in this particular corn maze that we were in, they handed us these little blue strings. And we were told that in the corn maze, at certain points, they had buckets full of these little trinkets. And you had to stop and pick up one of these little trinkets out of each bucket. So you wanted to make sure that you found them on the journey. You didn't want to miss out on the treasure of having this necklace. This is the one that Elizabeth made. So we wanted to make sure that we were able to find this. So we had another aspect of our trip through the maze, was to be able to find these treasures, these little trinkets. So at the same time that we wanted to be efficient in going from the entrance to the exit, from the beginning to the end, we wanted to make sure we didn't miss out on anything along the way. Our Christian lives are like that. And sometimes, in some ways, in many ways, because we do know that we have a beginning to our Christian life, and we have an ultimate goal at the end of our life. But it's the way we navigate it that we are most keenly aware of. It's the way that the decisions that affect us day to day, the way that we live out our faith day to day, that affects us. The author of Hebrews would point at the end of the book, in chapter 12, he points to Jesus as the author and perfecter of our faith, the beginning and the end, if you will. He is both who we start our journey with, and he is the ultimate goal of our journey, our ultimate destination. The thing about Christ is we are to follow him through that journey. When we identify our life as a journey, and you've heard that term used many times, life is a journey. We even have churches who put the journey in their name because they focus on the journey. But here's the deal. Here's the issue we want to look at. We can't merely focus on the day-to-day journey, because if we get too focused on the journey, we will take our eyes off the destination. Our lives always need to be progressing toward a close relationship with Jesus. We need to know more about him. We need to know what he does. That's how we learn to follow him. Jesus is, obviously, he's our standard. He is the one we need to be following. He is the one that we need to emulate, to imitate as we walk this path. But sometimes, as I mentioned in the sermon this morning with a quote from Bono, Jesus just isn't that easy to follow. See, Jesus at times we understand that he demands much. In fact, he demands all of us. And that is a difficult thing for us to navigate at times. Dietrich Bonhoeffer, the late great German theologian and martyr, he once said that when Christ calls a man, he bids him come and die. Jesus himself said in Luke 9 that if anyone will follow me, let him deny himself and take up his cross daily and follow me. These are tall orders. These are difficult. But you know what? We have grace. We depend upon grace to keep us on this path. But the fact that that grace is free to us doesn't take away the fact that that grace was costly, and to Jesus. If that grace was costly to Jesus, if he had to struggle for it, if it cost him his very life, then following Jesus is a difficult road for us to hoe. Sometimes following Jesus in that same costly grace, even though it enables us to stay close to Jesus, to grow in our faith, sometimes it makes us question whether or not it's worth it. The writer of Hebrews would tell us, would teach us, that keeping your eyes on Jesus, to follow him and to pay close attention to his word, to pay close attention to his example, to follow the Holy Spirit and his leading as well in this time, is the way that we keep from falling away. He says, pay attention lest you drift away. Now, we live in a very fluid culture, and what I mean by that is that even if we don't think so, we've got a lot of flexibility in our lives. We can change directions on our journey pretty easily. Even in our Christian lives, we can take our focus off of Christ and his example and let our own pragmatic influences take over, or our pragmatic instinct take over, and lose sight of our ultimate goal. We can change directions really simply in our lives. It's available to us. I mean, we have ways to go where we think that the grass is greener. Even, for example, even though unemployment is relatively high right now, we can still change jobs if we really want to. It may not be a better job, but we may think that we need a different job. We think we need a change. We don't want to work in this way, or we don't want to work these hours, or maybe it's more money, maybe it's not. Maybe we just need some circumstances to change. But that's a circumstance that we can really change a lot of the times. If we don't like our cell phone service, it may cost us to get out of a plan, or within just a few weeks or a few months, we're free to go and to find another plan, or to upgrade to a different phone or a different service. We shop at the places we want to shop. We shop at the places that give us what we value. Now, that may be price, that may be convenience. Whatever we value most seems to be how we follow. We eat at the places we like to eat it. So all of these things we are able to choose and change circumstances pretty easily, pretty quickly. And even in our church life, we choose our churches often based on what the church can offer us. Do we like the music? Do we like the programs? Does the preacher preach too long? Those kinds of things can influence and do influence the way that we choose where to worship and where to serve Christ. In our Christian life as well, we tend to avoid those sins that we find most repugnant, most repulsive. We tend to follow those commands that we find most convenient. And so we we have all of these things that affect the way that we live and that affect the directions we take. And all of them, so many of them, are journey focused rather than destination focused. Now there's a danger of being whimsical when we make big decisions. Most of us make them very responsibly, but sometimes we don't think through all the ways these choices affect our journey through life. Sometimes we don't recognize this happening. And I think the main reason we are blinded to this drifting away, to the fact that we're not actually following Christ, is because we've taken our eyes off of our destination. We've gotten so caught up in day-to-day detail that we have taken our eyes off of Christ, the author, the finisher, the perfecter, the one we need to be seeking. You know, if we don't know where our destination is, if we don't have a vision for our destination, it's easy to drift away from that destination without knowing it. It's easy for us to go in a direction where we don't really ultimately want to be when we take our eyes off of our destination. How can you see yourself drifting off your course if you don't know where your course is leading? And that's the question I think most of us need to ask ourselves. But Christians must be aware of the destination. We know where, or we know who our destination is. God is our goal. Christ is our goal. And if we're consumed with making the best way for ourselves on this journey, if we're consumed more with our conveniences and in the simplicity of our journey, without facing those challenges, we're in danger of missing out on the goal. We're in danger of not completing this course. Once we take our eyes off the goal and we make the journey our focus, our priority, we will ultimately, even if we pursue good things with good intentions, we'll ultimately drift away from the path that leads us to our ultimate salvation, to our ultimate reward. Last week, I asked the group to read Hebrews 1, and 2, and Hebrews 2, 1 through 3, as if there was nothing between them, as if it were one continuous passage. Hebrews 2:1 reads, "Therefore we must pay closer attention to what we have heard, lest we drift away from it." Now the therefore in that passage takes us back to the Son by whom God has spoken with great authority, and who is the object of our journey. The clear instruction here is to focus on Jesus, and by doing so, we won't drift. The trouble we often get ourselves into is that we set out on a journey and we begin to focus on the circumstances of that journey. We begin to focus on our trials, on our struggles. We get to focus on what needs we are not having met for us. And we become selfish. It's a natural thing for us to be. We end up being not where we want to be because we're not paying attention to the destination. And this turns the traveler, who is certain of his destination, into a wanderer who has no hope to arrive at any certain place. And here's the key for the Christian to understand. Your life is a journey. It begins and it ends with Jesus Christ. As I said, Hebrews 12:2 tells us that Jesus is the founder and perfecter, or the author and finisher of our faith. He was there at the beginning. He's there at the end. And if we neglect this great salvation on our journey will deteriorate into drifting. Sometimes, and some folks will think of this prospect of drifting away, and they'll think, is it really possible for me to drift away from God? Can I completely fall out of His grace? I don't think that's what is being taught here. I would submit that the question in this passage is not whether or not you can lose your salvation or whether or not you will attain your salvation. I think the point of this passage that we're looking at tonight is that there is a way to be certain that we do not drift. There is a way, an assurance that we can have if we just focus on Jesus Christ, focus on the Son and his great salvation, then we can be certain that the journey that we're on will arrive at the destination where we want to be.